boy, so rough and tough, don't care about anything but me. Yes, I just love him cause he's so crazy, just crazy about me.
Yeah.
Ooh, I love my ugly boy, so rough and tough, don't care about anything but me. Yes, I just love him cause he's so crazy, just crazy about me.
Yo dog, I heard you like skulls. Let's wrap up this short series on governance with some pie-in-the-sky thinking about what a more effective or better kind of government could be. We already know we have a series of somewhat contradictory goals, in that you want government to be representative of the will of the people, but you also want it to be effective. You want it to follow that will, but you also want it to educate and to lead and to make the best use of expertise. My ideals would suggest that the best form possible would be voluntarism, anarchism. But that's not possible in the current setup of society, the way our technology and industry and so on work. So that goes out the window. But that's still a guiding principle for me, in that so far as possible, I want everyone to have buy-in, to have a say. And our current systems are failing on that. Secondary concerns are that our current democratic system lacks long-term thinking. It's always thinking ahead to the next election. So these are problems that I feel that any alternative system has to address. My faith in humanity has taken a huge knock between the American elections, between two horrendous candidates, and Brexit over here, essentially a protest vote by people shooting themselves in the foot in order to stick it to the man. I approve of sticking it to the man, but not at such cost to yourselves. And that was such a strong disinformation campaign, and so many people were so ignorant on the actual factors. Whatever side you were on, a lot of people were not making informed decisions about what they were doing, and you see the same thing happening in the US elections, though somehow that's less surprising. I don't know, I guess since the Bush presidency, little about American politics really surprises me anymore. One of the things, besides disappointment, that has stayed with me from the Brexit campaign was when Michael Gove said, "Oh, people are tired of listening to experts," as though expertise was the same thing as, I don't know, arrogance or something. You know, we have people trained in these disciplines, aware of facts that we can't all be aware of, precisely because we need that expertise. So I think any system that we could hypothetically replace this one with must reward and value expertise. You know, this is a problem in government with them going against expert advice because they would rather chase populism. So we need to address that. The last thing before I get into this properly is that I know there are problems with what I'm going to propose. I know there's all kinds of practical problems, I know there's all kinds of exploits and so on. I'm not trying to present a perfect alternative system all in one go. I'm just shooting the shit and presenting some ideas that might spark some thought. You know, this shit's never going to happen, but in this hypothetical fun scenario, here's a way of organising our society that might offer some benefits over the way we do it right now. One of the first things I would do to fix society is to get rid of elections. Now wait, hear me out. I'm not saying get rid of democracy. I'm saying get rid of elections. The trouble with elected representatives is that it concentrates the power in the hands of a very, very few people, and they become very, very susceptible to bribery, lobbying, and corruption. The wider we spread out the power, the less likely it is that any big financial or other force will be able to come in and control everybody. So, no more, or at least very few, elections. You can think of it this way, okay? Currently, we have the electorate who tell the middlemen, the politicians, what we want. They vote on and pass it, because, you know, they present their ideas to the electorate and get voted in, and then those desires, those policies and so on are executed by the civil service and things like the police and, you know, the NHS and customs and excise and all those different agencies and so on that work for the government. So by eliminating elections, all you're really doing is getting rid of the middleman, the people in grey suits, the salesmen, and you're also able to make much more granular decisions. You're not voting for a party that has a whole raft of issues, some of which you agree with and some of which you don't. Rather, if you're voting on policies directly, you can have a much more granular approach. So you might want to renationalise the railways, but you might want to, I don't know, reduce constrictions on businesses otherwise. So you might have a mix of left-wing and right-wing views. Currently, you can't pursue both those goals. But if we got rid of parties, if we got rid of elections, if you voted directly on issues, then society could much more accurately represent what you want. Now, to an extent, you'd still need an executive to come up with options. So society is facing a problem, we're not raising enough tax. A bunch of experts get together and they present a raft of different ways in which we could do that. Oh, we could raise income tax, we could raise VAT, we could put some cuts in the military, we could ditch Trident, whatever. Then you can put those to the public and the public have a mass vote on it. That executive could perhaps still be elected or just selected from experts in different arenas like medicine, defence and so on. Maybe you could have sub-elections within areas of expertise to choose a representative to go forward to present options, and they could be advised by people within their arena. Now, putting everything to a mass plebiscite obviously has its own issues. As we've seen with Brexit, people often make bad decisions. Also, lots of people would not vote, so they would be left out. So you can't really avoid ending up with a minority of people making a decision for a large number of people. And the kinds of people that vote are those that really care, either pro or against something. Those who aren't sure, those who don't care, don't exercise the opportunity to have a say. But a lot of ignorant people are very vocal and very active. I mean, if you do, say, a web search on 9/11, you will find far more conspiracy theories and nonsense and disinformation and far less accurate information on what's there. The accurate information tends to come from the experts. So what I would suggest as a way to moderate that and to overcome the problem of ignorance is to moderate that mass plebiscite so that only certain people with a certain degree of expertise have the capability to vote. So how would that work? You're creating as broad a vote as possible, but only for people who are really qualified or otherwise have a good reason to vote on something. So if you're making a highly technical medical decision, only qualified medical professionals would get a say. If it's something that affects anyone that might ever need medical attention, then it would be anyone could vote on it. So what you would have would be a kind of public profile on citizens. Yes, I'm aware this creates its own issues, big brother issues and problems, but you would have a profile. This person has worked in these industries, this person has these qualifications, and this person lives in such and such a type of area. So rural decisions would be made by rural people, medical decisions would be made by medical experts, science decisions would be made by science experts, economic decisions would be made by economic experts, and so on. So you have as broad a possible voting base, but of people who are experts or who are affected the most, those who are qualified to make a decision. This is not dissimilar to how juries have to be set up to include people that understand the kind of crime that's going on. And this is, as I referenced in previous videos, this has been a big problem with white-collar crime, in that banking fraud and so on is so complicated that not many people are really qualified to stand on a jury and decide whether a crime has been done or not. It takes a certain degree of expertise. I'm not saying anything needs to be quite as tight as that, but we should perhaps restrict participation in certain votes to people who are qualified to make those decisions. That opens me up obviously to accusations of elitism and so on, but because different decisions are made by different groups and things that affect everybody, those decisions are made by everybody, I think we can get around that. And I think we have the technology to do this now. So we're talking a sort of technocratic, anarcho-democratic group. I don't know what you'd call it exactly. But because it would be so broad, it would lack many of the points of vulnerability that our current systems have, because nobody is really being elected, you don't have politicians making short-term decisions based on their desire to be re-elected. It frees society to make complicated, short-term detrimental but long-term beneficial decisions. You engineer a much more broad consent of the populace than our current first-past-the-post system does. You eliminate parties so that it's policies, individual policies and things that people care about that get voted on, and that's the way Western democratic politics has been going since the 90s. Party membership, only recently Corbyn has reversed that, but party membership has been declining, but people who have become members of single issue groups and pressure groups, things like that, that's ascended much more. People care about issues more than they define themselves tribally by party. At least that's been a trend for about 20 years now. So what do you think? I'm aware that there's problems with it, I'm aware that there's vulnerabilities, there's the Big Brother issue, there's accusations of elitism that can be levelled. You can talk about a technocratic elite of the educated or so on, but expertise, that's not necessarily a bad thing. I don't know. I know there's issues with it, but I think it's an interesting idea. If I was to set up a new nation, that would be kind of the way I'd want to set things up, at least politically. And since everything else stems from your political decisions, I think social issues would follow on after that. What do you think? Am I crazy? Probably. But am I crazy about this? Take care. If you like what I do here, please like, subscribe. You can find me on social media, on Twitter at Grimachu, James Desborough on Facebook, James Grim Desborough on G+. My main website is postmortemstudios.wordpress.com. If you want to help me out with a little money, which will go to support my games, writing and other projects, you can do so at Patreon, which is also Grimachu.